And a couple hours later, she's like, "Well, I made it." I was like, "Excuse me?" She made global ambassador. So, truly powerful woman, got many different talents. And you've never heard anybody teach, by the way, on the different animals, personality types, like with Dr. Katrina. She actually has them acted out and everything else. But today, she's also going to teach some things that's going to help you to empower you to build your business. So, as Coach said, get ready, note takers and money makers. But again, action takers are bigger money makers. So, Global Ambassador, Dr. Katrina Ferguson. Take it away, champ.
And the the beauty of anything, well, definitely the beauty of being a part of your team is your leadership. And literally, that's what leadership is, right? The definition of leadership is having the ability to influence people to do things that they wouldn't normally do were you not there to influence them to do them. And that's definitely who you've been and what you've been in my life. And for that, I am eternally grateful. So good morning, everyone. I so appreciate having an opportunity to share with you this morning. As Dr. Sands alluded to, I am a serial entrepreneur. I've always believed in multiple streams of income for several reasons. One, as a single parent mom trying to make sure there was food on the table for my children, I didn't want to be solely dependent on one stream of income, and one group of people to make sure that the money continued to flow. So yes, having had, success in the network marketing industry and real estate and that, and many other areas, brick and mortar companies as well, I also found something else out about myself in this process. And it was simply this: whenever I had a situation or I hired someone to do something for me and I didn't really like the way that they did it, rather than complaining and trying to change them and trying to make somebody into something that that they didn't necessarily want to be, I made a decision most of the time that I would do it myself, that I would figure it out, that I would, get a team of people together and we would really make it happen for ourselves. And that's what has happened in so many different areas of my life. Specifically when it comes to our tax situations. As I said before, in network marketing and direct sales, what we tend to do is we attract people who don't necessarily, always have all of their I's dotted and their T's crossed. So we don't always know, definitively what's supposed to happen. We get involved with the company. We love the products. We're out there. We're telling people how fantastic they are. Then we start making a ton of money, right, which is all great and awesome until it comes tax time and we're like, now what do we do? So what happened, right? A confused mind tends to do nothing most of the time. And so we would, I know in our organization, we all went to this one particular tax preparer and he did all of our taxes. And so we thought, okay, this is good. We got people making $250,000 a year getting tax refunds. We didn't know any better. And until we started getting letters from the IRS, right? Letters saying, well, you owe us tax money. You owe us taxes. And so that guy, of course, was ghost. And when we could find him, he wasn't willing to help because he really didn't understand what he'd done himself. And that really speaks to why and how important it is to make sure that you choose a tax preparer that has a clue, if that makes sense. But anyway, we got these letters, and they were what's called today correspondence audit. And you shouldn't be afraid of, an audit from the IRS, because audit simply means prove your expenses, right? So the only reason that you would have to be afraid is if you could not prove your expenses, if you could not prove that your deductions were legal and lawful. That's the only time that you need to be afraid of the IRS, right? Is if you're trying to cheat the system. If you're dealing with truth and honor, integrity, things that, and not compromising, there's nothing to be afraid of. Well, we were, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the tax preparer was. And understand this, because I learned this in this process as well. Regardless of who prepares your taxes, if you sign them, you're responsible for what's in them. It doesn't even seem fair, but it's the way it is, okay? So when I got this letter and they went in and looked at my taxes, they decided that I owed I hope you guys are sitting down. $60,000, over $60,000 in back taxes. Can you imagine? That is the official definition of stress for a single parent mom with 3 kids at home who's barely keeping food on the table for many years and is still trying to get caught up, right? From those years that she didn't have the money. So I just went through the process with, I didn't have that gentleman, the tax preparer wasn't with me. So I kind of had to figure out what was going on and what he had done. Fortunately, it was actually Dr. Stan who introduced me to a gentleman who understood taxes in and out and kind of walked me through understanding what he had done and what was wrong with what he had done. But the reality was, because I wasn't trying to cheat the system, because I did kind of keep an eye on the numbers so that they weren't overly inflated, I was able to pull the receipts from my credit cards, statements. I was able to go back to my calendar and create the mileage records, from place to place. I was able to go to, the pharmacy, to the doctors, to get receipts. I was able to do all of the things to put together the records. Now, it looked like I was traveling internationally by the time I got finished putting all of these documents together. I had probably about 13 binders and a big rollerboard suitcase going downtown to Baltimore, Maryland, in my suitcase going into the IRS building for this audit situation. And I remember the lady looking at me like, "What is that?" I said, "You wanted me to prove my expenses, so here they are." She was not pleased. She was not pleased. So they're very often accustomed to people not having their records, not being prepared, not knowing anything about what their rights are or what they have a right to deduct. So I went in, and think about it, it took me probably about 4 months just to pull all of those documents together. Then it took another 4 months to go through them with the IRS agent. Can you imagine carrying that stress for almost a year, because it took another 4 months for them to come up with a total determination of what I owed or what was owed or what I didn't owe. The official definition of stress. And after went through that whole process, at the end, they sent me a letter saying, "Okay, we've looked at everything that you've done, everything that you brought in." And I had to sit there with them for hours. She would look at my bank statement and she'd say, "Okay," or a credit card statement. She'd say, "Okay, I see here's a Office Depot charge. Show me that receipt." And I literally had to go to the binder and find that receipt and show it to her. And she would say stuff like, "And there better not be a soda on there, because a soda is not deductible." That's how anal she was. But there was no soda, so there was nothing she could do. And by the time we got to the end, the IRS literally owed me another $1,100 as opposed to me owing them $60,000. Now, you would have thought that that was enough for them, right? It wasn't. They came back the next year for another $34,000. And in that process, they ended up owing me $600 more. Now, I'm not saying that to impress you. Okay, well, maybe I'm trying to impress you just a little bit. The thing that I'm trying to impress upon you, though, is simply this. With your record keeping and an understanding of the tax laws as they relate to home-based businesses and how powerful of a tax deduction having your own home-based business is, not only can you maximize your legally maximize your tax refunds, minimize your tax liabilities, and keep more money in your pocket. Then you don't have to be afraid of the IRS, because you will know that what you've done is legal, it's ethical, and it demonstrates truth, honor, integrity, and true character. And that's really what I want to see happen for us, especially as kingdom citizens, right? We want to remain above reproach. We don't want to be the people on the front page, where they're saying, "Oh my God, look what happened to so-and-so because there was this made." Now, do people make errors on their tax returns? Absolutely. There are people who make mistakes and they get held accountable for those mistakes. So it's the risky practice. It just is what it is. But then there are also those people who are out there deliberately defrauding the government and the IRS. Even the Bible tells us that we are to pay unto Caesar what is due to Caesar, but it does not tell us that we have to pay him any more than what we have to, right? We don't have to pay a dime or a dollar more in taxes than we should have to. And that's literally what we want to see happening here. We want to make sure that we have more to give and more to deposit into the kingdom for kingdom purposes, right? So that's what we're going to talk about in this series of tax conversations. Dr. Stan has asked me to share some breakthrough tax strategies over the next several weeks, so we're definitely going to do that. But just wanted to lay kind of a foundation today as we begin to think about it, and definitely as we begin to talk about it. And I want to get you guys to start thinking about it, because we are at the end of May. We're coming up into June. This is the 6th month of the year. We're about halfway through the year. Now, some of you are saying, oh my gosh, that's almost 6 months of me not keeping any records. This is about 6 months of me not paying any attention. Well, what am I going to do? Well, little known fact here, if you take about 3 months, especially where your mileage is concerned, you can take about 3 months of your mileage record keeping, right? And you can multiply that by 4, the 4 quarters of the year for 12 months. And you can use that as your estimate when it comes to that part of your record keeping, because mileage is a very big tax deduction for business owners. There are some other strategies that we can use to begin to pull the necessary numbers from your records, whatever records you have, whether you're swiping a credit or debit card. But what I will say to you is, beginning today, starting today, stop paying cash for stuff. Why? Because as long as you swipe a credit card, then there's a paper trail. It's going to show up on a bank statement. It's going to show up, and if you've got a bank statement, you can ultimately get a receipt if you have to. But just get in the mindset and use one credit card. Do not commingle your funds, personal and business. That's one of the biggest mistakes that home-based business owners make. You know, you have to treat it like a business, and then it'll pay you like a business, and then you can save money in terms of your taxation like a business owner does. But if you treat it like a hobby, it's going to cost you like a hobby, and you're going to pay taxes on your business as if it were a hobby. And that literally is a part of the tax code. It talks about the fact that hobbies are not tax deductible. Do you realize, speaking of the federal tax code, excuse me, the federal tax code is about 70,000 pages long. 70,000 pages. Now, just for a frame of reference, right? The Bible alone is only about 800,000 words, where the tax code has 9 million words. The Bible, 800,000 words. The tax code is 9 million words. So the tax code is about the size of 11 Bibles. And none of it is really great news, right? Unless you know what you're reading. And that's why not one person, most tax preparers, unless they specialize, don't understand what's in it as it relates to home-based businesses. So when you're choosing a tax preparer, you want to choose them like you choose a doctor, right? You don't go to a podiatrist if you have a heart problem, because your foot and your heart don't operate the same. There are different rules, different circulation patterns. So if you have a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist. Why? Because they've studied the heart, and you're going to get the best results from that cardiologist. Just like if you are a real estate investor and that's your primary way of making money, then you probably don't want to go to a tax preparer that specializes in employees or W-2 tax returns. Why? Because they're not going to know what they're doing. They're going to be depending on software to do your tax return. And guess what? Software, as intuitive as it is, it doesn't always ask the right questions, and it doesn't always know all the right answers, because things change so quickly. I can tell you, even this tax year, for the 2018 tax year, with all of the changes in the tax law, the software that we were using was being updated from January 1st all the way into late February. So many people had already filed their taxes, and those that get refunds file early, they had already filed their taxes, and then the software was updated and their taxes had to be amended. So things are changing constantly. So what you want to have is a tax preparer that understands the home-based business laws as it relates to your taxes, someone who specializes in that area. So that's going to be very, very important that you begin to look for someone who does that. And, ask your current tax preparer some key questions. Ask them, can I hire my kids in my business? If they say no, then you'll understand that they don't really understand the tax laws as it relates to home-based businesses. You know, I'm gonna give you, and as we go on, I'll give you some other questions to ask them, because I'm not saying that you don't have a good tax preparer. Don't misunderstand me. I'm sure there's some great tax preparers right here on the phone with me who could, with us, that could probably do a better job at this than I am or than I could. But, you know, my experience comes, you know, my knowledge comes experientially. It comes with over 20 years of doing taxes, and it comes with several interactions with the IRS, as well as the necessary certifications that come with being able to prepare and practice with them. So it's going to be important that you start looking at who's going to be doing your taxes for next year. Also, I want you guys to understand something else. Home-Based Business Magazine says that a home-based business is the very best tax deduction, bar none, and that a home-based business last year saved over between $5,000 to $7,000 in tax deductions. Well, why is that? Okay, well, let's look at it. There's two tax systems out there. There are two tax systems that work in the United States. Now, most of the time when I say that, people will say, yeah, there's one for the rich, and then there's another one for the poor. Well, yes and no, because in actuality, there's one that will make you rich, and then one that will either make or keep you poor. So there's one for employees that's designed to take wealth away from you. In that tax system, you're taxed on every single dollar that you earn, beginning with the very first dollar. Now, if you get a W-2, you'll understand what I'm talking about. On a W-2, let's say you make $10 an hour and you work 40 hours a week. You'll see you made $400 for that week. But your check is not for $400, because you'll have federal taxes taken out, you have state taxes taken out, somebody named FICA is taking money out of your check as well, and then you get what's left, and that's what you live on. And then there's a system for the self-employed that's totally different. In that system, you're taxed after all of your expenses come out. So in that same example, let's say you earned $400 in your business that week. Now you can go and put gas in your car that you use to go to your appointments. You can buy your office supplies. You can take all of your deductions out of that $400, and let's say you only have $50 left. Well, now you're only taxed on that $50 instead of the $400. Now, some of you would say, like, well, why would the IRS allow that second tax system to operate? Because we're accustomed to saying that, oh, they just want my money. They just want my money. Well, why would they create a system or a situation that allows that? Well, let me tell you. I'm sure glad you asked that. Let me tell you why. They allow that because the Small Business Administration, I'm sorry, I can't even, let me talk. The Small Business Administration realizes that the self-employed individual is working in a system that is created to create economic growth, really, okay? So the SBA says that small firms or small companies are responsible for over 11 million of the 18 million jobs that are created in the United States. That's over 64% of the jobs that are created in America. And those are numbers from about 5 years ago. This saves big money. But let's come up a little bit further into what's happened today. The Congress allows home-based businesses tax breaks for two reasons. One, to stimulate growth in the economy, right? Because this is the most important segment of the entire American economy, because of their objective that every taxpayer have a part-time small business and continue to run it actively. You know why? Because that provides the ideal safety net when there's an economic problem, a layoff, or a downturn. For instance, when you have a small business operating, remember we talked in the very beginning of the conversation, we talked about multiple streams of income. If I have 7 streams of income and one of them is my job and I lose my job, I have 6 other streams that I can focus on in a moment's notice to start to build income. I don't have to go running to the unemployment office to try to figure out where I'm going to get the money. All I have to do now is turn my attention to one of these part-time businesses and turn it into a full-time business. So Congress's incentive here is one, money. That's their way of incentivizing us to do more. And then guess what? As we do more, we create more larger businesses, and now we are creating jobs for other people at the same time. And that is why Congress decided to go ahead and provide huge financial incentives to encourage us to start businesses, to run businesses actively by giving us these tax refunds and these tax advantages. Now, here's the thing though. There are some rules that we have to follow to do that. And these are the things that Congress requires us to get these refunds. I hope you're writing these things down, right? I'd rather trust a short pencil than a long memory. First, you have to have, and you have to be able to prove that you're trying to make a profit, right? You cannot take your underwater basket weaving hobby and turn it into a business if you're not trying to make a profit. The key word in the tax law or the tax code is have an intent, right? They wanted to incentivize us to start the business because the tax breaks don't start until we start trying to really make a profit. And they do expect you to do that within a reasonable amount of time. Now, they also incentivize you to start that business, just kind of a side note, you'll hear this again as we go through this, the first year by giving you $5,000 tax break just for startup expenses. Literally, $5,000 because you started your business and you're attempting to make a profit. So that gives you an opportunity to get your business going, right? It gives you some opportunity to build some momentum. The second thing that they require is that you work that business consistently and on a regular basis. Now, why would they want you to do that? Well, because remember, they don't want it to be a hobby. They want this to be a viable business so that, God forbid, something happen where you lose your major source of income, you can ramp up in this business, create a significant income, and ultimately begin to create opportunities and jobs for other people. So you have to be doing this on an active and consistent basis. Well, what is active? How do you define it? Okay, we'll talk about that too. But just consider this. If you're doing, it's a part-time business, 8 to 10 hours a week, every week, maybe it's 4 hours on these calls every morning. Maybe you're seeing people for 4 hours. Maybe, you travel to a big event and you average it all out. You got 40 hours a month, and that's what you do every month. And if you're doing that regularly and consistently, then perfect. You've met that criteria. And then the third and the largest and the most important is that you keep records. You've got to keep records. You've got to treat your business like a business. You've got to treat it like a business. And once you've done those three things, now you can qualify for a ton of new tax deductions. Now, understand, don't misunderstand. The IRS does want your money, but more importantly, Congress wants a stable economy. And that's why they allow your small business to contribute that way, all right? Small businesses in the U.S. today, there are about 22.9 million small businesses in the U.S. today. Out of those, over 50% of them are home-based businesses. Can you imagine? Small businesses, you would think that, well, let me ask you, who do you think employs the most, who has the most employees, small businesses or like the government and large businesses? Well, it's going to be small businesses. Over 99% of employers are small businesses. This is how powerful being a small business owner is. Small businesses employ over 50% of all private sector workers. They create over 75% of all of the new jobs. And if you can make it past 3 years, as a small business owner, 70% of them stay open. They don't ever close. So that's what's important. That is why they're going to allow us to have all of these other deductions, is because it is a small business is crucial to the American economy. So I'm going to stop here because I could go on and on and on and talk about about the foundational part of this, but I know that I'll be coming back next week so that we can continue having some more conversations. We'll continue to talk about some record keeping and continue to talk about the foundation. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll really start to get into the nuts and bolts about what this means to you, what this means to your business, to your family. I'm going to share with you some systems that we use in our office for our small business owners to keep track of their record keeping totally seamlessly. I mean, literally automatically without any worry. So all you have to do is get those documents to your tax preparer at the end of the year, and it just makes the whole process go so much more easily. So congratulations. You've made a great decision in becoming a home-based business owner, and I know that you're having crazy success, and the best is yet to come. So with that being said, Dr. Stan, I will turn the call back to you. Thanks for having me.
Wow, powerful.